In this video I will show how to knit or sew a folded rib together. I have here worked a swatch where I have knitted up stitches along a cast-on edge and worked a rib twice the height of the desired folded edge. It is important that the rib is knitted or sewn straight together to avoid the edge getting twisted. It can therefore be a good idea to create some anchor points along the way. This ensures that the correct stitches are knitted or sewn together. You can do this by placing a safety pin in the same stitch, both when picking up and in the open stitch. The safety pin at the cast-on edge is pushed through so you can see it from the wrong side. In some cases there are obvious anchor points, such as at the point of a V-neck. Or at shoulder seams. I will show different ways to do it. You can either work with one stitch at a time from the needle, which is knitted or sewn together with one stitch from the cast-on edge. Or you can pick up all stitches along the cast-on edge and afterwards knit or sew the stitches together. I will first show how you knit the stitches together one at a time. With the right needle, I pick up a stitch from the cast-on edge and place it on the left needle. And then I knit it together with the first stitch from the needle. Then I pick up the next stitch and knit the two stitches together. And then I bind off a stitch by pulling the first stitch over the second stitch. I'm careful not to make the bind off too tight. I continue this way until all stitches are bound off. I make sure that my anchor points align. I have instead broken the yarn and threaded a needle to sew the stitches together with Kitchener stitch. I sew up through the first stitch in the cast-on edge, and down through the next stitch. And then I sew the first stitch on the needle knitwise and take the stitch off the needle. And sew through the next stitch on the needle purlwise and leave the stitch on the needle. I now sew up through the same stitch in the cast-on edge which I previously sewed down through, and down through the next stitch. take the stitch on the needle off knitwise and sew through purlwise. All stitches are therefore sewn through twice. You can choose to pick up all stitches from the cast-on edge with a circular needle before you knit or sew them together. I count how many stitches I have on the needle and pick up the same number. It is during the picking up process that I need to make the anchor points match. I use a slightly thinner circular needle for picking up than the one I am knitting with. And then I pick up stitches along the entire cast-on edge. Along the way, I remove my markers and double check that I have the same number on the needle and on the pick up needle. And then I continue to pick up stitches. I can now knit or sew the stitches on the two needles together. When I knit them together, one stitch from each needle is knit together. And both stitches are taken off the needle. And I knit the next two stitches on each needle together. And bind off the first stitch in the same way as before. Again, I am aware to bind off loosely. I continue this way until all stitches are bound off. The stitches can also be sewn together with Kitchener stitch. Here, the stitches on the back needle are perceived as purl stitches, and on the front needle as knit stitches. I therefore slip the first stitch on the back needle purlwise. And sew through the next stitch knitwise. On the front needle, the first stitch is slipped knitwise and the next stitch is sewn through purlwise. Back needle, slip purlwise through knitwise. Front needle, slip knitwise through purlwise. You get the most flexible edge by sewing the stitches together. You can also see my other video about using a stitch wire during the picking up process, which gives a more rounded edge where the picked up edge is completely hidden.